The sky explodes, and you run for your life in desperation, looking for a cover. But it is too late. The storm has begun. You should have been more careful, Stalker. Now there is no escape. Hello, Stalkers, and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. As promised, this new episode of our lore and theories is once again about blowouts, also known as emissions. This video will contain heavy spoilers for all three Stalker games, as well as references to a few other videos we have done. You don't need to watch them to understand this video, but still I suggest you at least watch the last lore and theories episode, in which we explained the nature of emissions, their history and effects on the zone. This time we will discuss the effects of the blowouts on living creatures, that is, humans and mutants. During a blowout, everyone will run for their lives to the nearest cover, that is, a solid or underground contraption, because failing to make it in time will result in death. This behavior can be observed in S.T.A.L.K.E.R, where NPCs will sprint like there is no tomorrow. Before anything else, I would like to mention that some stalkers have a special ability to sense emissions approaching in advance. We can cite Zulu and Pilot, the latter explaining that his back will start to ache a few moments before each emission. As it was made clear earlier, anyone standing outside during an emission is supposed to die. This can be seen on various NPCs throughout the series, as well as being experienced by the player himself. Yet, there are some individuals which have another rare ability to survive emissions. One such stalker was S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the protagonist of Clear Sky, who survived at least 2 blowouts without any form of cover. Still, and according to Lebedev, S.T.A.L.K.E.R would not be able to do that indefinitely. With each emission, his nervous system would take a hit, and it would eventually burn out. In fact, if the player stays outside during an unscripted emission, the character dies. In the design documents for Oblivion Lost, the game that would become Shadow of Chernobyl, it is mentioned that scientists are developing special equipment which enables protection from emissions. The Psy helmet was one of the devices supposed to give resistances against emissions, on top of protection from Psy waves. But since emissions don't really happen in the final game, it is hard to say if the ID was kept or not. Most likely it was not, though, since the player will die to the blowout at the CNPP if he does not reach the sarcophagus in time. Still, the concept was brought back in S.T.A.L.K.E.R with the introduction of antibiotics, an experimental drug apparently developed by Professor Ozerski. This pill contains a substance nicknamed zombie powder, which completely shuts down the user's nervous system for a short amount of time. Consuming this drug just before an emission makes you fall into a sort of coma, but you will wake up safe and sound after the emission is over. Furthermore, if you survive 3 emissions using the antibiotics, you will receive an achievement called Marked by the Zone, which allows Major Dektyrev to survive blowouts without even using the drug anymore. This reminds a lot of the ability possessed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R. In both cases, the character falls unconscious and wakes up after the emission is over. Alright, now, what is the real effect of blowouts on normal humans? Well, there is a strong belief that the people caught outside during an emission are turned into zombies, but I don't think this is actually the case. As far as I know, there is not a single piece of information which says that blowouts zombify stalkers. So why do people believe that emissions create zombies then? I think there are 3 main reasons. First, it is easy to assume that there is a link between emissions and Psy emissions, the latter being known for turning stalkers into zombies. And while there is probably a link, because psychotropic stuff about the brain and nervous system, the noosphere and stuff like this, well, blowouts are still clearly different from Psy emissions. In fact, there are no Psy effects during a blowout, and NPCs who died because of one do not seem to come back as zombies, they stay dead. Second, and despite what we just said, there is the fact that in Call of Pripyat, many zombies will spawn after an emission. This is especially evident during the evacuation at the end of the game, which takes place immediately after an emission. However, this does not mean that those zombies were created during the emission, and actually, the Oblivion Lost design documents gives us another explanation for that phenomenon. In the description of the zombies, it is written, quote, "Sensing approaching energy blowouts, zombies get considerably more active." End quote. What I understand from this is that zombies, who are most of the time idle in order to spare their energy, get some sort of boost during and after a blowout. This leads them to get out of their idle state and actively move around, maybe looking for prey. It is possible that emissions actually recharge the zombies. This would explain how they are able to survive for a very long time in harsh conditions with no water and no food. Moving on to the third and last point, I saw an interesting idea among the comments of the second Lore and Theories video, which was about Monolith and zombie brainwashing. Some players believe that zombies, and maybe Monolithians too, are stalkers who first died, and only then were brought back to life through brain control of Psy emissions. This is in contradiction with the controllers seen in Call of Pripyat, where we clearly see that the stalkers go from human to zombie with little transition. But it does not mean that zombification always works like that. If this theory is true, it would explain why the player always dies from Psy emissions rather than becoming a zombie. It would simply mean that Psy waves first kill you, and a bit later resurrect you in the form of a zombie, hence the name zombie. If this theory is true, the possibilities are endless. Just imagine that all the people killed by Psy emissions, blowouts, and maybe any other lethal thing in the zone really, could be brought back to life by the sea consciousness via Psy devices such as the Brain Scorcher, and only then become zombies and Monolithians. This would explain the very large numbers of Monolith soldiers and zombies that can be seen everywhere in the zone. But still, I don't think this theory is true. It seems a bit too easy. But who knows, be sure to write down your opinion in the comments below. Now, there is one thing that we also need to check, and that is the effects of blowouts on zombies and Monolithians themselves. So I went to the river port in Pripyat, where you can find both zombies and Monolithians. When an emission approached, some Monolithians went into cover just like normal stalkers. However, the sniper in the tower remained at his position and did not care at all about the emission. Zombies did not react to the storm as well. And when the peak was reached, my character died, but the zombies and the Monolith sentry did not. So what can we conclude about this? Well, it looks like the zombies are immune to emissions for sure, most likely because their brain is already too damaged to be targeted by the blowout. But for the Monolithians, the answer is still unclear, since some of them went to hide from the emission, but others did not, and they survived. Hopefully I have a theory. In the second episode of our Lore and Theories series, which was about Monolith and zombie brainwashing, we saw that some monolith soldiers are very similar to zombies, while others still appear as humans. We speculated that this is the result of different levels of zombification on the Monolithians. Well, if zombies are able to withstand emissions, it is possible that monolith warriors with a high level of zombification can do that as well, while those who are only slightly zombified, and thus closer to a human, are not immune to blowouts and need to hide from it like all the other stalkers in the zone. Unfortunately, we cannot verify this theory because all Monolithians in Call of Pripyat wear a mask, but I think it would make a lot of sense. Alright, now let's talk about mutants. We don't actually know for sure if mutants are affected by emissions. In both S.T.A.L.K.E.R and Call of Pripyat, it seems that mutants are immune to blowouts and will not attempt to take cover during one. Yet, in Clear Sky's opening cutscene, mutants can be seen running away from the incoming blowout. This suggests that the creatures of the zone have the ability to sense an emission a few moments before it happens, and that they do fear blowouts and need to hide from it. This is just a theory, but I think the fact that mutants don't care about emissions in-game is a mistake or a deliberate oversight by the creators of the game, because as a player, you are supposed to be too busy running for your life to be able to care about the behavior of mutants, and so they did not bother to program mutants getting back to their lairs. Maybe I'm completely wrong though, maybe mutants are supposed to be immune to blowouts. If that's the case, it could be because blowouts are connected to psi waves, which are known to be mainly directed at humans. The reason for this could be that the human brain is the most advanced. But then, why are crows also killed during an emission? Another possibility is that some mutants are affected by blowouts and others are not. If that's the case, we don't really know which mutants would be immune and which would not, but perhaps it would have something to do with zombification. You see, in the games it appears that psi waves have little to no effect on mutants, yet Professor Herman claims that no mutant other than controllers can survive in an intermittent psi field. This makes me believe that some mutants are actually already zombified, at least to a certain extent, much like some monolith fighters. And maybe, because of this zombification, such mutants are unharmed by emissions. Of course, this would mainly affect humanoid mutants, such as snorks and bloodsuckers, since psi waves were designed to attack the human brain. In that case, humanoid mutants could be somewhat zombified, granting them protection from emissions, while animal mutants need to hide from emissions, explaining their behavior in Clear Sky's cutscene. But who knows? As it stands, the real effects of emissions on mutants remain a mystery for now, and I hope we will get some answers in the upcoming S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. Right, with all of this information about blowouts in mind, we will finally be able to tackle one of the great mysteries in S.T.A.L.K.E.R, that is, the fate of S.K.E.R and the Clear Sky fighters, who were caught in an emission at the end of the game, Clear Sky. But that will be for the next Lore and Theories episode. As for now, thank you for watching, stalkers, and goodbye.